Today, on this 27th day of April, 2026, we are witnessing what can only be described as the final, chilling sunset of the Sussex era. This story does not unfold in the ancient, hallowed halls of Buckingham Palace, but rather under the sterile, unforgiving glare of a television studio in California. It began with a single comment that has since reverberated across the globe like a thunderclap. Kevin Costner, an Academy Award winner and a man whose career was built on the foundation of being truthful and courageous, has done the unthinkable. He did not just issue a polite rejection, he delivered a public execution of a brand that was already hanging by a thread. During a calm, calculated conversation intended to promote his charitable work for first responders, the actor was asked about the guest list for his upcoming private event in Santa Barbara. His response was a cold, sharp blade. He stated clearly that Meghan Markle was not invited, but it was the reasoning behind this snub that has sent the British monarchy and the Hollywood elite into a state of silent panic. Costner did not just mention an undesirable approach or a clash of personalities. He linked the Duchess of Sussex to the most toxic and immoral scandal of our generation, the Jeffrey Epstein case. By placing her name in the same breath as the disgraced Prince Andrew, Costner has injected a poison into the Sussex narrative that no amount of high-priced public relations can cure. This is not a typical critique from a British tabloid or a disgruntled palace courtier. This is an excommunication from the very pinnacle of American power, the same power structure that Meghan and Prince Harry have fought so hard to conquer since their departure from royal duties. As we sit here in late April, 2026, the fragile stability of the House of Windsor is being tested to its absolute limit. How did a woman who once dreamed of being the global face of empowerment find herself publicly shunned by an industry titan? Why is the Epstein name resurfacing now? And why did Costner choose this specific moment to draw a line in the sand? Today, we peel back the polished mask of global generosity to reveal the machine of ambition that may have finally gone too far. From the whispers and the private bungalows of Los Angeles to the reported fury of King Charles III in London, we are looking at a crowning crisis. This is the story of an empire built on quicksand, a husband caught in an untenable position, and a duchess facing a reckoning she never saw coming. Stay with us as we analyze the interview that changed everything and explore the nuclear option now being discussed in the corridors of Westminster. The clock is ticking for the Duke and Duchess, and as of this 27th day of April, their time in the sun may have finally run out. To understand why Kevin Costner's public rejection felt like a guillotine dropping on a reputation, we must look beyond the single interview and peer into the long, calculated history of the Duchess of Sussex's rise through the ranks of the elite. As we stand here on this 27th day of April, 2026, the narrative of a victimized princess has been replaced by a much more complex and, for many, disturbing image, that of a power-seeking strategist whose methods have finally caught up with her. Long before the world knew her as a royal, the whispers in the private corners of Los Angeles were already forming a pattern. At the San Vicente bungalows and during quiet lunches at the most exclusive clubs, the same tales were told by those who saw her work from the inside. They spoke of an unrelenting and at times unsettlingly pushy ambition, a drive that seemed less about artistic craft and more about the acquisition of influence. People who worked with her during the 6 seasons of the television show Suits remember her as a motivated actor, certainly, but one who was exceptionally skilled at the art of upward networking. As her fame increased, so did the stories of what industry insiders called a focused charm assault. This was a specific, well-planned method aimed at the rich and powerful men who held the keys to the kingdom. A former studio executive who observed her at numerous industry events in the early 2010s described these meetings as anything but spontaneous. They were tactical maneuvers designed to penetrate a famously closed sector. The strategy was almost always the same. A perfectly timed compliment to put the individual at ease. An intense, unwavering concentration that made the target feel like the only person in the room, and then a subtle, expert shift toward possible cooperation or financial support. In the cutthroat world of Hollywood, this is often seen as the price of admission for those who want to be famous. However, the whispers suggested that the execution occasionally crossed into personal areas that made her targets uneasy. By the time she moved onto the global stage of the British monarchy, this hustle was rebranded as a quest for liberation. But Hollywood has a very long memory. When the Sussexes returned to California, they expected to be welcomed as the new king and queen of the entertainment world. Instead, they found an industry that had changed. In a world shaped by the movements of consent and the reevaluation of power dynamics, the methods that might have been dismissed as ambition a decade ago were now being viewed through the perspective of professionalism and boundaries. The first major crack in the polished mask appeared in 2023, when a high-ranking executive at Spotify publicly labeled the couple as grifters after their multi-million-dollar deal collapsed. That single word, grifter, did more damage to the Sussex brand than 1,000 tabloid headlines. It suggested that beneath the talk of global empowerment and human rights, there was no substance, only a desire for the paycheck and the proximity to power. Kevin Costner, a man who represents the old guard of Hollywood, is a person who values content over show. He is a titan who built his empire on talent and longevity, not on the fickle winds of social media or royal titles. Reports from insiders suggest that Costner's frustration began when he felt his own charitable platform was being used as a backdrop for the Sussexes' brand building. The tension truly began to simmer behind the scenes of the 1805 Live benefit. Sources indicate that the Sussexes' powerful agency, William Morris Endeavour, or WME, had used their significant leverage to secure an invitation for Harry and Meghan. It is said they leaned on the fact that they also represented Costner to ensure their other high-profile clients had a seat at the table. To a man like Costner, who treats his seaside estate as a sanctuary for genuine philanthropy, this felt like an invasion. He reportedly felt cornered, forced to host guests who brought with them a circus of paparazzi and a hidden agenda of self-promotion. One source close to the organizing committee noted that the atmosphere was heavy with a silent rebuff. While Costner was happy to share a stage with Prince Harry, his interactions with Meghan were short, stiff, and lacked any of the warmth usually reserved for his peers. This brings us to the core of the conflict, the clash between genuine achievement and what many in the industry see as crude opportunism. For years, Meghan's defenders have argued that she is a victim of a double standard, that a man with the same drive would be praised as a visionary. But the sheer volume and regularity of the complaints from seasoned professionals point to something else. It suggests a pattern of behavior that ignores the subtle social contracts of the ultra-elite. In Hollywood, you can be ambitious, and you can even be ruthless, but you must have the goods to back it up. When Costner finally spoke out, saying, "She made an approach toward me, and I did not answer," he wasn't just talking about a single conversation. He was confirming years of private conjecture. He was signaling to the rest of the industry that the Sussex brand had become radioactive. This public excommunication was a message that some individuals in the highest circles of American power had reached their breaking point. They were tired of the charm assault and the relentless networking that seemed to have no end goal other than the maintenance of a celebrity status that was rapidly losing its luster. As we look at the state of their affairs on this 27th day of April, it is clear that the Montecito strategy has failed. The gates that were once wide open are now being bolted shut. The world of Hollywood royalty has looked at the real royalty and decided that the price of association is simply too high. This is the reality of an empire built on the quicksand of perception. Once the perception shifts, the entire structure begins to sink. And as Kevin Costner has shown us, all it takes is one person with enough courage to say no for the whole world to start listening. There is one name that functions as a radioactive isotope in the world of the global elite, a name so toxic that its mere mention can dissolve decades of reputation in a single breath. That name is Jeffrey Epstein. As we navigate the fallout on this 27th day of April, 2026, we must confront the most explosive segment of Kevin Costner's interview, the moment he detonated a narrative bomb that has left the Sussex camp in a state of total paralysis. When Costner looked into the camera and stated, "I have no connection with the Epstein situation, Prince Andrew and Meghan. That will be the last thing I have to say," he wasn't just expressing a personal opinion. He was dragging a Duchess out of the sunshine of Montecito and into the darkest, most immoral corner of modern history. To understand the gravity of this, one must realize that the Epstein scandal is the never-again moment for the British monarchy. We have all seen the catastrophic damage done to Prince Andrew, the disastrous interviews, the multi-million-dollar settlements, and the permanent exile from public life. For years, the palace has worked tirelessly to cauterize that wound, to convince the public that the rot stopped with the Duke of York. But by placing Meghan's name in the same sentence as Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein, Costner has suggested that the rot is not contained. He has suggested that the infection has spread to the very couple who claim to be the moral future of the crown. For a long time, the supposed links between Meghan Markle and the Epstein circle lived only in the dark, unproven corners of the internet. There were whispers about flight records and mentions in the notorious Black Book, but these were largely dismissed as the work of extreme conspiracy theorists or those with a vendetta against the Duchess. Many royal strategists even suspected that some of these rumors were part of a dead cat strategy, a political tactic where a shocking, distracting story is thrown onto the table to stop the media from focusing on the more concrete, damaging facts of Prince Andrew's actual involvement. If people were busy debating baseless rumors about Meghan, they might spend less time looking at the deposition of Virginia Giuffre. However, the moment Kevin Costner spoke those words, the dead cat became a living nightmare. Costner is not a keyboard warrior or a tabloid hack. He is a man who moves in the same interwoven, gossipy world of the transatlantic elite, where high finance, Hollywood, and minor royalty regularly cross paths. His information does not come from forum threads. It comes from the quiet lunches and the private jets where the real stories are told. When a man of his stature gives these rumors a public platform, he provides them with a horrifying new level of credence. He is signaling that within the highest circles of power, there is something, some interaction, some photograph, or some witness that makes the connection plausible to those who actually know the players involved. The psychological and strategic impact of this cannot be overstated. In the post-Me Too world, any association with Epstein is a death sentence for a brand built on empowerment. Meghan has spent years crafting an image as a champion for women's rights and a pioneer of social justice. To have that image tied to a man who ran a global sex trafficking ring is an irony so bitter it threatens to choke her entire career. It creates a guilt by association that is impossible to scrub clean. Even if no proof is ever presented in a court of law, the court of public opinion has already seen the headline. The damage is done the moment the names are paired together. Furthermore, this accusation creates an impossible situation for the House of Windsor. The palace is now forced to confront a terrifying question. What if Costner knows something they don't? Or worse, what if they have known all along and have been praying the story would never break the surface? By linking the Duchess to the Epstein case, Costner has turned a private family feud into a global security threat for the monarchy. It suggests a pattern of associating with harmful individuals that threatens the very integrity of the crown. It brings back the agony of the Andrew affair and mixes it with the continuing drama of the Sussexes, creating a toxic cocktail that King Charles III simply cannot ignore. As of this late April day in 2026, the silence from the Sussex camp is deafening. Usually, their legal teams are quick to issue denials and threats of litigation. But the Epstein name brings with it a different kind of fear, the fear of discovery. In a legal battle, both sides have to open their books, and that is a risk that very few people are willing to take when it comes to the Epstein archives. Costner did not provide details, and he did not provide proof. He didn't have to. Just by saying the names in the same breath, he has forced the world to ask questions they never thought they would ask. He has drawn a line in the sand, separating the old-school integrity of Hollywood from what he clearly perceives as the murky, opportunistic world of the Sussexes. This wasn't just a snub, it was a warning. It was a message to the world that the polished mask of global generosity might be hiding something far more sinister than anyone imagined. As the sun sets on Montecito today, the shadows are growing longer, and for the first time, the Duke and Duchess are finding that there are some names you simply cannot outrun. The Epstein connection is no longer a whisper. It is a shout that is being heard from the studios of California to the throne room of London. As the clock strikes midnight in London on this 27th day of April, 2026, the atmosphere within the stone walls of Buckingham Palace is anything but peaceful. While the official stance from the monarchy remains a stoic and unwavering silence, the reality behind closed doors is one of disciplined, high-alert panic. For King Charles III and his inner circle of advisors, the recent allegations detonated by Kevin Costner are not merely another tabloid headache. They are a seismic vibration that threatens the very foundations of the House of Windsor. Sources close to the royal household suggest that Costner's interview was met not with shock, but with a dismal, heavy feeling of vindication. For years, senior courtiers had whispered their worries about Meghan Markle's judgment and the potential for her past to collide with the dignity of the crown. Now, those worries had been realized in the most public and damaging way possible. The king, who has been navigating significant health challenges throughout 2025 and into this current year, is reportedly at his breaking point. He is a monarch who inherited a throne already bruised by scandal, and his primary mission has been to provide a sense of continuity and moral clarity. To have the Epstein name, a name that represents the absolute nadir of the monarchy's modern history, re-emerge in connection with his daughter-in-law, is a blow that feels almost personal. Everyone at court remembers the agonizing process of distancing the family from the Duke of York. The Andrew issue was supposed to be a never-again moment, a wound that had been cauterized and left to heal in the shadows. But as of today, the wound has been ripped open again, and the infection is spreading to the next generation. There is a sense within the palace that the Sussex problem has moved beyond the realm of family mediation. For a long time, King Charles sought to balance the affection of a father with the obligations of a sovereign. He hoped that by allowing Harry and Meghan to build their life in California, the friction would eventually dissipate. However, the events of the last few years, the documentaries, the memoirs, and now this public excommunication from the Hollywood elite have proven that distance does not equal safety. The palace now views the Sussexes not just as estranged family members, but as a direct threat to the institutional integrity of the monarchy. The king is said to be deeply saddened, but his sadness is being replaced by a cold, royal resolve. He understands that the crown cannot survive if it is seen as a sanctuary for those associated with such dark and damaging circles. Furthermore, the burden of this crisis is falling heavily on the shoulders of the Prince and Princess of Wales. William and Catherine have spent the last several years acting as the primary shield for the monarchy, maintaining a flawless public image while dealing with their own private trials. As the Sussex brand becomes increasingly radioactive, the contrast between the two couples has never been more stark. While Meghan is being shunned by industry titans in Santa Barbara, Catherine continues to be the most popular and trusted figure within the royal family. This disparity is creating a two-tier monarchy that the palace finds unsustainable. They know that as long as Harry and Meghan hold their royal titles, their actions, no matter how far away they occur, will always reflect back on the king. Behind the scenes, the silent panic has manifested as a flurry of legal and constitutional activity. Royal correspondents with solid sources within the gold stick and silver stick circles report that meetings with constitutional experts have become a daily occurrence. These are not casual chats. They are the groundwork for something much more serious. A secret file, often referred to by insiders as the Sussex dossier, is reportedly being updated with every new development. This file is said to contain a meticulous record of every breach of protocol, every questionable business deal, and now, every public allegation that links the couple to damaging figures. The palace is moving from a defensive posture to a proactive one. They are preparing for a scenario where the Duke and Duchess labels are no longer a source of pride, but a liability that must be removed. The timing of this revelation is particularly cruel. The monarchy is currently in a state of transition, trying to modernize while clinging to the traditions that give it meaning. Both the King and the Princess of Wales have had to step back from public duties at various points due to health, making the institution seem vulnerable. In this weakened state, the Epstein connection acts like a predator sensing blood in the water. It invites the kind of scrutiny that the palace has fought for decades to avoid. It forces the public to ask if the royal family is truly a symbol of national unity or simply a collection of individuals with very poor judgment and friends. As we move deeper into this 27th day of April, the question is no longer whether the palace will act, but how. The never complain, never explain mantra is being tested by a world that demands transparency and accountability. King Charles III is facing the most difficult decision of his reign. He must decide if he is willing to sacrifice his relationship with his son to save the institution he was born to lead. The silence from Buckingham Palace might be loud, but the gears of the monarchy are turning with a grim and purposeful momentum. The Sussex era is being weighed in the balance, and as Kevin Costner's words continue to echo around the world, the scales are tipping toward a permanent and painful separation. In the high-stakes theater of the British monarchy, there is a term used only when every other diplomatic avenue has failed, the nuclear option. As we reach the final days of April 2026, this once unthinkable scenario has moved from the realm of palace gossip into the cold light of constitutional reality. We are talking about the formal, legal, and public stripping of the titles of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. To the average observer, a title might seem like a mere vanity, a relic of a bygone era. But for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, these titles are the bedrock of their global brand. Without them, they are no longer royal emissaries on the world stage. They are simply celebrities in a crowded and increasingly hostile market. Taking away a royal title is not a simple task. It is a constitutional minefield that has been built over hundreds of years of law, precedent, and legislative practice. It is not something the king can do with a mere wave of his hand while sitting at his desk in Windsor. However, the momentum for this move has reached a fever pitch. In both the halls of Buckingham Palace and the corridors of Westminster, the debate is no longer about if, but how and when. The primary legal instrument being discussed is the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. This law was originally passed during the First World War to allow the British monarch, with the consent of Parliament, to strip titles from enemy aristocrats, British peers who were fighting on the side of Germany. The act established a vital principle that has remained dormant for over a century. A royal title is not an unbreakable birthright, but a privilege granted by the state. It is a contract that can be rescinded if the holder acts in a way that is contrary to the interests of the country or brings the crown into serious disrepute. For years, the Sussexes have walked a fine line, but the recent allegations involving the Epstein case have shifted the conversation from family drama to national embarrassment. Lawyers and constitutional experts are now arguing that the Duchess's alleged associations and the resulting public scandal fulfill the criteria for disreputable conduct required to trigger a modern interpretation of the 1917 Act. We must also look at the more recent and perhaps more relevant precedent set by the King's own brother. In late 2025, King Charles took the extraordinary step of finalizing the removal of Prince Andrew's remaining honors and his right to use the His Royal Highness styling in any capacity. While Andrew technically retains his dukedom, he has been effectively erased from the official fabric of the monarchy. This move provided a modern blueprint for how the palace can deal with a family member whose behavior has become an intolerable burden. The Andrew model showed that through the use of letters patent and the royal prerogative, the king can strip away the prestige of a title even before Parliament moves to strike the name from the peerage books. Sources close to the palace legal team report that a massive file of material has been surreptitiously compiled over the last 24 months. This dossier is said to include more than just news articles. It contains recorded interactions, witness statements from former staffers, and a detailed map of the Sussexes' business dealings. The goal is to present a case that shows a consistent pattern of behavior that is incompatible with the dignity of a royal title. In this context, Kevin Costner's public statement is a gift to the palace lawyers. A testimony from a credible, neutral, and high-profile American citizen like Costner provides the PR cover the king needs. It proves that the criticism is not just coming from spiteful British tabloids, but from the very heart of the American establishment. If the king were to move forward, he would likely seek a resolution in Parliament. This would spark a vigorous and incredibly public debate, putting Meghan's denials to the ultimate test. It would be a trial in the court of public opinion, with the world's media acting as the jury. We are already seeing the beginning of this process. Public petitions calling for the removal of the Sussex titles have garnered hundreds of thousands of signatures in the last few weeks of April 2026. In a democratic age, the monarchy cannot ignore the voice of the people, especially when that voice is calling for the protection of the institution's integrity. The fallout for Meghan would be catastrophic. Her entire post-royal identity, her books, her podcasts, and her charitable ventures is anchored by the word Duchess. Without it, her marketability collapses. She becomes a former actress who married a prince, rather than a member of the most exclusive club on earth. It would be the final, painful break, a symbolic exorcism of the Sussex influence from the royal body politic. As we watch the news unfold today, on this 27th day of April, it is clear that the nuclear option is no longer a deterrent. It is a countdown that has already begun. The crown is preparing to defend its heritage, even if it means cutting away one of its own branches to save the tree. As we reach the final minutes of our deep dive on this 27th day of April, 2026, it is clear that we are witnessing the closing chapter of a modern tragedy. What began as a fairy tale of royal rebirth and Hollywood glamour has reached a cold and calculated reckoning. The empire that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex sought to build in the sun-drenched hills of California now looks less like a fortress and more like a house built on shifting sands. Kevin Costner's public condemnation was not just a temporary news cycle, it was a structural collapse. It signaled that the very foundation of their influence, the fragile mix of royal mystery and celebrity proximity, has finally given way. The psychological toll on Prince Harry in these recent months must be unimaginable. He is a man who gave up everything his nation, his family, his military honors, and his sense of belonging to build a new life with his bride. But as of late 2025 and early 2026, we have seen a significant shift in his public presence. His increasingly solo appearances, from promoting the Invictus Games in Canada to his somber walks clearing landmines in Angola, suggest a man who is trying to rediscover his own identity outside of the Sussex brand. He is caught in an untenable position, trapped between his loyalty to his wife and the realization that the world he left behind might have been the only place where he was truly safe. He is now more alone than ever, standing by as his wife faces allegations that question her very integrity and place in the elite circles of power. From a business perspective, the endgame looks even more dire. The Sussex brand is now facing what many in the industry call reputational radioactive decay. In the high-stakes world of multi-million-dollar deals with giants like Netflix, the most dangerous weapon is not a lawsuit, but a moral provision. These clauses allow corporations to terminate contracts if a public figure brings significant negative attention to the brand. By linking Meghan to the dark ecology of the Epstein scandal, Kevin Costner has created a poisonous narrative that no corporate board of directors wants to touch. The financial security they sought to protect their independence is now at the mercy of a public opinion that is rapidly turning against them. As we look toward the remainder of 2026, the basic contradiction of their situation has been exposed. They depend on the very royal status they have spent years criticizing, and they seek to belong to a Hollywood system that has its own strict, unforgiving rules of conduct. Costner's honest story about their personal interactions has shattered the carefully crafted image of the pioneering humanitarian. It has shown that in the world of the ultra-elite, you cannot simply buy your way to the table with a title. You must have the respect of your peers. For the House of Windsor, the path forward is a painful one. King Charles III faces the monumental task of preserving a 1,000-year-old institution, while his own family remains a source of global controversy. The nuclear option of stripping titles is no longer a distant threat. It is a live conversation that could redefine the monarchy for the 21st century. The whispers in the private bungalows of Los Angeles have finally turned into a shout that can be heard across the Atlantic. The future has never been more unclear for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. As they sit in their mansion in Montecito on this late April day, they must realize that the one thing they cannot outrun is the truth of their own actions. Thank you for joining us for this deep analysis. We want to hear your thoughts. Should the king move forward with the removal of titles? Or is there still a path to redemption for the Sussexes? Let us know in the comments below. Goodbye for now.